Hi, and welcome to our review of Star Trek Picard, Episode 5. I'm joined by my two nerdiest friends, Alan
Yo.
and Namir.
Oh,
The name of this episode is what, Alan?
Fly me to the moon.
I have devoted my entire being to protecting one individual. That person is your ancestor.
I want you to remove an obstacle. Does the name Picard mean anything to you?
We'll get him out alive.
There is a divergence coming.
Let go!
We need to protect the tapestry of history.
well, it's just like every other episode except for episode 2 of season 2, where it has its moments of, like sparkle, but the rest of it is kind of just meh. And I think that's just going to be the way the season is going to play out.
I like this one more than the probably last two. There was a lot. I was a lot to digest. Some of it worked, some of it didn't. But yeah, I had a good time, and I was sad when it was over. I found it was an abrupt ending, and I was left wanting more. So that was good.
I had fun watching this one. There was lots going on. It was so packed in this one episode that I really wish they had put some of this into the previous episode, because the last episode seemed like the opposite of this episode. It was very light and fluffy. And having this Gary 7 type Guardian of the Galaxy character was not something I thought I was missing in my life, but super excited to have one of the supervisors back. So I was excited about that, and we're getting to get more into that. And I wanted to start talking about the very first scene, because I had opinions basically from the teaser.
Yeah, I was happy with that. I mean, I was a little bit confused with the cutting at first, but once they got into the conversation, I finally liked that the Laris, the supervisor character, was like straight up about why she was there, because that's what I get tired of in these shows, is the cryptic aliens. Like in the past episodes where we're looking for this watcher, I'm like, why don't they just say who she is and where she is and what she's doing there? So it was nice for once that it wasn't going to be one of these cryptic aliens that gives a bunch of riddles that they got to figure out, and it ends up being more plodding around looking for clues. So, I enjoyed that. It's funny, I find now with Patrick Stewart in these shows, it seems like they just find scenes where he just goes, sits and chats with people, because he's like, I guess, elderly, and he's not really a man of action anymore. It seems like he just goes from one long chat to another long chat to another long chat with other characters. But I like this one because, it moved the story forward. He's like that where he was like General Picard and going to shoot the Borg Queen. I think that's the most action Patrick Stewart has done in this whole season, where it's mostly just him meeting up with people and sitting and having chats.
Do you think they have to cut out when he does the old man sigh when he sits? He's like, ah.
Oh, I do that now.
Well, I was happy that for Alan, because he was right about Gary 7. So I was watching it, I was like, oh, Alan was right. But the rest of it I found annoying and confusing, because the cutting back and forth I thought was kind of like poorly done. I don't know, you're an editor, Lucas. I feel like any of the tension that was inherent in the scene with the astronaut is just like zoop, they get rid of it as soon as they cut back to Picard and Laura. So I was pretty annoyed by that. I thought the conversation was all right between Laris and Picard, but I'm still, based on that conversation and what Picard has said, I'm still confused about how time travel works and I don't know if we want to get into it, but I kind of feel like we should get into it. I thought the having the astronaut character be an ancestor of Picard as the reveal was fine. I don't think it's necessary. I think it's a little contrived, and actually it's not needed. And for me, it's annoying because I think TV shows have this tendency to say that every important character has to be connected in some way, meaning that Picard is only Picard because he has this ancestry of like greatness and exploration. as opposed to, him being able to be Picard on his own. And I don't like the implications of that. I think it's kind of lazy. And the only reason I thought, maybe they did that because they wanted to put his future in jeopardy, like a Back to the Future type thing. Like if you get rid of Rene Picard, then the future Picard doesn't exist. That's the only reason I can think of them doing it. But that kind of bothered me a little bit. So, but other than that, it was fine. Those are my two major nitpicks, but whatever, it's fine.
Well, I was super on board with the first scene of the astronaut crashing to Earth, and then I was super disappointed when it turned out to be like a training simulation gag. And the first thing I thought was, wow, this gag is really old. They used this same gag in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and that was cool when they did it then. Just to give it another perspective, like this gag was old in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes in 2001, and that movie was 20 years ago. So now the gag is super old, and it's always irritating because the first time they did it, back in the 80s, you really have a genuine surprise. You were taken in, you thought all the crew were dying and all this stuff was happening, and then you're like, oh, it was all a simulation, and then it's like this revelation, like surprise thing, because it's new. And then when it's not new, then it's like, oh, there I was, tricked again. It's like, when you're a teenager and somebody taps you on the shoulder and you look this way, but they go over there. That's funny when you're 15, but if somebody's doing that when you're 45, you're like, what the hell's your problem? Like, do you know what I mean? It's not funny. This is the same type of gag, and it feels like it lacks imagination. And so I kind of agree with you, Namir, that it kind of sucked the whole. It could have been really cool if she was actually crashing. You know what I mean? But then she's not. She's just, she failed her test. There's no stakes there. However, the Gary 7 character I really liked, because I like science fiction and I like spy movies. And then my favorite sub-genre is a combination of science fiction and spy movies, which isn't done very often. And I realized that, having just rewatched Picard season 1, that's what they're doing. They did kind of like a spy thriller with Soji being kind of like a sleeper agent, and in this case, it's kind of the same idea where they're doing, the supervisor. Her name is Talum. That Talum is this kind of spy, kind of character. And there's even later on in this episode a full-on Mission Impossible, like there's a heist and we're going to do this and we're going to do that kind of moment, which on one side was cool, but the other side was it was weird that it was so like, it wasn't even pretending to not be Mission Impossible. It was just doing Mission Impossible basically.
Absolutely. I was like, oh, they're going to do an Ocean's 11.
Vault at the Bellagio. This is probably the least accessible vault ever designed.
Yep.
What's the name of the Deep Space Nine episode where they do in Ocean's 11?
Bada bing, bada bang, season 7.
That's right. They're going to do Bada Bing, Bada Bang.
Namir has no idea what we're talking about.
You guys, I feel like you have too much knowledge. You really, I'm not sure how this happened. I would like to like just observe your life, like Gary 7, like for the past 20 years.
You would be very bored.
What the plot of this episode is, and essentially what it's revealing to be the plot of the whole season, is that Picard's ancestor, Rene Picard, which is, by the way, named after the other Rene Picard. Did you know that, Namir? That Rene Picard is named after another Rene?
There's two Renes.
Well, I would say that Rene is named after this Rene.
Well, yes, a nerd like you would say that, but in reality, in the real world, this Rene in this episode was taken from another episode of TNG.
His little nephew that burned to death.
You're my nephew, Jean-Luc, from the Starship Enterprise.
Oh, right.
So Jean-Luc Picard has a nephew who eventually, burned to death in a fire. By the way, it's his brother's son, And so this is like Renee, but a girl.
Doesn't Picard have like he like breaks down and starts sobbing?
And he punches his brother, and they have a fight, and all that, and they get muddy. And
well, I think Namir's remembering Star Trek Generations, and you're remembering Family. But anyway, yes.
Alan, keeping it real.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I interrupt.
Why are you apologizing? You're keeping us on the straight and narrow.
It's true. It is true. Yeah, because otherwise we'd just be making stuff up.
I know, Namir and I are just going, blah, 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 blah.
Remember that episode where Picard and Riker are riding that unicorn into the moon,
That never happened.
What kind of drugs are you taking?
It was a My Little Pony Star Trek episode.
This plot is very similar to First Contact, where they have to make sure that first contact between human and Vulcans takes place. And I don't know what is the thing that Rene Picard is going to do in that, or not going to do, that's going to cause this divergence in the timeline. But it's they say in the episode that she finds a microorganism and brings it back to the Earth.
I know, I'm fascinated by what that might mean.
Is that a significant piece of this puzzle, or is just like a throwaway thing? Because it's hard to know at this point.
No, I feel like it must be significant, or else they wouldn't have mentioned it, because that's a very specific thing to say. They're like, she finds a microorganism that she's convinced is sentient life, and then she brings it back.
Well, this is my theory, is that in the year 2024, the only way we would ever meet an alien species, aside from one coming to Earth, in other words, that we would go and meet one, would be on the moon of Jupiter. Like, if there's any kind of science that is plausible, that would be that's plausible.
Why are you even talking about plausible science? That has no place in this episode or this show. I don't like what are you even talking about?
Well, I think that they're trying to. They would try to do something that was plausible in the year 2024 with the Renee character. All I'm saying is it's the same as if they said, oh, she goes to the moon and finds water. It's not a significant plot point. It's just something that an astronaut could conceivably do in the year 2024. So I think that's why. But I don't know that in itself, like, I don't know that the micro organism that she finds like goes on to evolve and become Q eventually or something like that.
I don't know. I feel like, I think with this show, you really do need to take science out of the equation and things that are plausible out of the equation. As soon as I saw like Sung's drone shield of lasers, then I was like, oh, this episode, they're just making shit up.
Oh yeah, I forgot that that's not like in the far future. That's just like in 2 years from now. Okay.
Yeah.
I know. I'm kind of wondering what the connection is, because there's that hologram in like the first episode of Adam Soong.
So I feel there's another episode somewhere where there's a character that has to go back and help their ancestor fulfill their destiny, or they don't exist. But I can't think of an example. Can you think of one, Alan? Is that a thing that's been done before in Star Trek?
Maybe.
Well, other than First Contact, you mean?
Well, because in First Contact, it's not an ancestor. It's just like it's a past, like of humans. But it's not like in Back to the Future he goes back to his family. In this case, it's a bit more Back to the Future-y, because he goes back and meets his like great grandmother or whatever.
Right. Like there's no other episode where there's a risk of being like Marty McFly kind of thing.
I feel like there has been. I the only thing I can think of is Dr. Bashir, when he goes to the past and then he thinks he meets his great grandmother, and then he starts to think that he has to have sex with her so that he can exist.
That was a great scene. I hate to see the look on your face when you get back to the present and you realize I'm not there or I never existed.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I might have to watch that episode.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, where they go back to the original Star Trek and they get Forrest Gumped in. That's like one of the best Deep Space Nines.
We'll get to Deep Space Nine eventually. Yeah, I'm not sure where this Rene Picard stuff is going. I kind of like it, but at the same time, I feel like we've seen this kind of stuff before. The the future is the past is the future. And just like you said, Namir, it just all feels a little bit too convenient.
Yeah, and I kind of wish that they had set this up a little bit more. It's kind of the same for this season, is that they don't do enough setup for things. Like she just appears in episode. I guess she's at the end of episode 4, and then you figure out who she is in episode 5. But it would have been nice to have a little bit more about her, because all of a sudden she's there, and you're like, oh, there's another main character.
Wait, is she the girl at the end of the last episode who's reading the book? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's her.
Which you don't realize, because I had no idea what was going on in that scene.
Yeah, it's like it retroactively has meaning, but when you're watching it, you're like, I don't understand this. Hugh's trying to snap his fingers like a beatnik, and it's not working.
I just made this whole connection with First Contact, and I noticed that when Renee Picard shows her passport when she tries to get into the party, that I paused it and looked at the passport, and her date of birth is the release date for Star Trek First Contact.
I have so many questions.
Who's the huge nerd here?
Yeah, I think we know.
The reason I remember the date was I had a poster of First Contact on my wall.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why I remember the date. You know what I mean? Like, I don't remember the date of every Star Trek movie that came out. Star Trek 6, December 6th, 1991. But, some I do. Some I don't. Star Trek Nemesis, December 13th, 2002.
Oh my God, stop.
You're going like Dustin Hoffman, Rain Man there.
I'm going to go to Vegas and count some cards. That's what I'm going to do.
Okay, so wait, can we now talk about the time travel spaghetti? Because
yes.
I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. I need somebody to explain this to me.
Leah Thompson.
I've already explained it.
But you explained it incorrectly in a way that doesn't make sense with the context of the show.
I don't know. The executive producer said the same thing I did, so I'm just going with that.
I think your confusion is understandable because they didn't do a very good job of setting what the rules are. Because every time you do time travel, you have to set up the rules so that it's very clear, like what the stakes are and what's happening. And in this show, this series, it's not very clear. And that's not the only thing that's not very clear. There are many things that are very unclear because they have so many threads going on, and I'm not really sure how they're going to resolve every thread in a satisfying way.
It's just a TV show.
But yes, it is. I know it is. But it's okay if it happens just like once. But the problem with the show is that it's full of these things. It's like full of things that don't make sense, and if you think about it too hard, it just all falls apart. And it really, for me, I have trouble enjoying it because I'm always like, that doesn't make sense. That's just stupid. Why would they do that? There's always these like questions popping up instead of being able to get into the show and thinking, oh, that's really smart. Oh man, they're doing a really good job. It's the opposite. I'm like, oh, that's really dumb. They're doing a dumb thing again. Oh, there's another dumb thing. It's like constantly.
I'm just enjoying, I just watch it, based on my theories of what they're, of how the timeline works. I mean, Namir has his theories about how time travel works. None of us are university educated physicists, not well versed in quantum mechanics. So,
I once did a presentation on quantum computers, so
quantum computers has nothing to do with time travel. I don't know what that has to do with
time travel.
but I'm impressed with it. Oh my God.
You admitted that you're smarter than me.
Alan, I'm not. I'm just trying to keep up with you. Your Star Trek knowledge is very intimidating. So.
Yes, that's it. And all my astronomy and physics knowledge comes from Star Trek. I didn't actually take any of these classes, so
Well, and I think that's kind of what my issue. I mean, I don't mind them doing time travel. I'm happy to go along with the ride and have fun. But I don't feel like they thought about it very strong or very hard. and so that I don't want to think about it really hard either, because I don't know, I don't feel like they did. So, and it's always just a shame where you're like, there's so much new things you could do with time travel that you haven't seen before, and they choose to do something they've done before that doesn't add anything, or. And again,
there's a really good episode of Prodigy where they do a weird time travel thing where the ship like breaks into different speeds of time. Like some of the crew members exist in a faster timeline. It's really good. Like for a kids show, that was a really great episode. And I'm like, man, that's pretty high concept.
But well, that's what I mean. Like in next generation, already by next generation, time travel had become a trope, and they had done it. So they generally avoided straightforward time travel. They did it, a few times, but they would do things like time loops, or they would do like in Cause and Effect, or they would do in like Timescape, which was similar to what you were just saying, Alan, where they had like time bubbles, and different bubbles had different speeds, and and in Deep Space Nine they did the time delay, hearing the voice of the woman, and all these kinds of interesting. All these kinds of interesting things. And I think this is like when you do, there's a new Star Trek show, you can go like, okay, I can add to the tapestry of this diversity. But, they just decided to just do the straight old, kind of Back to the Future / Star Trek 4 time travel.
Yeah, that's what I like to mention too, is that as we're moving along here to other parts of the episode, is that the resolution to the whole immigration deportation thing, that was very anticlimactic. Like I look back at it now and I'm like, what was the point of that? Because it seems like you say, this episode could have been the storyline here, if it had picked up when they crash landed and then we moved into this, it would have been a lot tighter and it would have been a lot more interesting. Like I feel like all this cop chase looking for Rio's immigration stuff, that was just a waste of time. Like I don't know because it didn't get a whole lot of social commentary or anything out of it, anything particularly insightful from it. It was pretty much by the numbers, kind of tropey, and a lot of cliches. And then you thought you were gonna get this great action scene with a jailbreak, and it was just like, oh, we press the tricorder button, EMP. That seems to be a solution to everything in movies now that has anything with a machine in it that had to stop. Like, oh, let's just put electromagnetic pulse at it. And they did that in Moonfall too. And that was all it was. They stopped the bus, they knock out the one dude, and then they're all free. I'm like, well, that was not that exciting at all, and I don't know why I wasted time with this. Like, we should have picked it up at the Watcher and the Rene Picard stuff, as soon as they got back to the 2024. That's why I say that frustrates me, is that they waste time with stuff that doesn't seem to have any useful point to the main story.
Yeah, I totally agree, Alan. Like I was thinking the exact same thing. I was like, what is the point of this? It doesn't develop the plot in any way, it doesn't develop the characters in any way. It's literally busy work. It's like, okay, we need to give these three characters something to do so that we can actually just like deal with the other characters in the more interesting plot line. And that was basically it. I think, they could have, like, that would have been an interesting storyline if they had somehow connected it to Renee, right? Like if the three of them, their job was kind of like to somehow connect with Renee, then you have like a natural resolution there, and then they have a real goal, right? But and it's kind of an obvious thing to do, but they didn't do it, and it's kind of baffling.
I actually like the Prison Break. I had fun watching it. I agree with that. All that time spent with Rios through the immigration, process or whatever, being incarcerated, doesn't really go anywhere, and it's time that seems wasted in the show. And I think I'm like you, Alan. Whenever they're wasting time, I'm like, do you know how old Patrick Stewart is? Do you know how many more episodes we have? We have a finite amount of episodes. We're going to have 10 episodes in this show and 10 episodes in the next season, and that's it. There's no more Star Trek Picard after this. And don't waste 2 episodes with these B-plot side stories that have nothing to do with the main plot, and they're not really, like bringing anything or adding anything. Because it's just, that's like an episode we're never going to get back. They're not going to give us an extra episode at the end.
Yeah, like you can edit out all of that stuff with Rios and the episode would be fine. Like it would probably miss it. You wouldn't miss it, and it would probably be much more enjoyable. And Rios is a good character. I like him. But he just, he's just kind of wasted.
Right. And one last thing I'll say about that scene that drove me nuts is the character of Raffi. And I think it was Namir, you said this last week, where basically I don't understand her character. She's supposed to be a Starfleet officer, and she does not behave like a Starfleet officer. She's not rational. She's not problem solving. She doesn't follow rules. She's just going, we're going to like beam them out and like totally pollute the timeline. But
they just literally did that in the last episode in front of all those cops. And to me, I was like, might as well do it again. You've already fucked up the timeline by them witnessing you beaming already.
That's true. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's true. But that's my point. The point is, personal taste aside, if Raffi was not a Starfleet officer, then at least I could accept her personality a lot more. But I have a hard time believing that this person made it through Starfleet Academy, because the whole point of Starfleet and being a Starfleet officer is being rational and following at least most of the rules, I mean, sometimes you break the rules, like Kirk will break the rules or Picard will break the rules, but they don't just go like, I'm angry. I don't have time to think about this. I'm just going to break this rule.
Once they become an admiral, then they turn bad.
They turn bad, yeah. But she's not a bad character. She's not evil. She just decides. She's just kind of I wouldn't say unhinged, but she's just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. That's my problem.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I never thought of it that way. Because you think going through Starfleet Academy, they teach you all about the rules of time travel, right? Because eventually, if you're in Starfleet, you're going to go back in time, right? So you have to not to step on any butterflies or whatever, and then you've got the Prime Directive and all this stuff. So there's so many rules about first contact and muddying up time travel and that kind of stuff, and she's totally forgotten all of that, or it was just not part of her character. And in which case, how does she become an officer?
Yeah, how is she? Isn't she the commanding officer of the USS Excelsior, or is she the first officer?
I think she's the first officer, but she's definitely bridge crew.
But even in the first season, she never came off as like, the way that she dealt with everything did not come off as like, Starfleet officer material. Like, she was on drugs. She was like super upset about things. She was like, all these things.
Yeah, and it's my chief complaint with the show. It's, supposedly smart people doing dumb things.
In this episode, there's Picard says Kirk's Enterprise did such and such a thing, and it's the second time in this season that they specifically reference Kirk's Enterprise. Oh, because he was trying to remember Gary 7, and he suddenly has this. He remembered his that he read about Gary 7 back in the Academy 60 years ago. Oh yeah. And anyways, I thought that was a lot of overt conscious Kirk references by Picard in this season. Doesn't Picard start getting suspicious of wow, there's a lot of Kirk related things in this mission, and I wonder if there's a meaning behind this.
Do you think he's just setting up, the next Star Trek show?
Oh, you know what? That makes sense. They have to just say Kirk. They have in their contract, they have to say Kirk at least once every 2 episodes, so that people will go will perk up and be like, oh, isn't that a character? Isn't that a thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because in TNG they reference Kirk once in The Naked Now, and then I don't think they reference him directly until Unification in season 5. And this is 2 times in 3 episodes.
I had no problem with the callback. Again, I think they had to make the connection to Gary 7 somehow, but whether it was the most interesting way to do it. I mean, it seems unlikely that Picard would just have this random memory from 50 years ago. And it's like, oh yeah, I seem to remember something like this.
Yeah, and it's not like Talon. What's her name? Talon, the supervisor.
Talon, I think.
She doesn't know who Kirk is. She doesn't know what the Enterprise is.
Yeah, she was straight up on why she's there. So they didn't really need to even mention Kirk. They just wanted to make sure they made, like, look how smart we are that we made this. We referenced the original series obscure reference, and now we're using that plot point in their show. They like those fan service references.
And I love the bit where Picard is incensed because Talon is listening in on Renee's therapy sessions. He's like, "This is private," and then they just sit down and listen.
Did you know that it was Q?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I know John Delancey's voice. When he throws it, tries to be Sigmund Freud.
He does the same voice that he used in Tapestry when Picard goes to see Beverly Crusher, and it's Q.
What seems to be the trouble, Lieutenant Picard?
They try to make this whole mysterious thing about the therapist, and we all know 5 minutes before they show Q that it's Q, and Picard is like, "What? Something's wrong. We need to see the therapist." And so yeah, it's Q.
I feel like I'm always ahead of these characters.
There's a reason for that.
And then I don't understand why.
Bad writing.
You don't have to say it like that. You got to say it like it's a statement, a fact.
I just don't understand why Q is trying to change the future, because he's trying to. It's like he's trying to talk Renee Picard out of being an astronaut, and at the same time, that whole thing with Dr. Adam Sung. And I don't know what's going on.
I have a theory, and I think if they do this, it'll be interesting. I think that changing the timeline gives them the Federation, and not changing the timeline gives them the Confederation. So I think they have to change the timeline.
You're saying that if Renee Picard goes to the moon of Jupiter and finds little microorganisms, that actually is going to cause a bad thing, which is the Confederation.
Exactly. So
Right.
Actually, Q is doing the thing that he should be doing.
That's super smart. Yeah. So that makes sense, because that means Q was in the past trying to dissuade Renee to save the Federation and the timeline. But somehow he lost his powers. And because he lost his powers, he then has to make a bargain with Data Jr., with Brent Spiner. And so he has no... he doesn't care about Brent Spiner and what Brent Spiner's trying to do, but Brent Spiner can do this thing for him, which is to dissuade Renee Picard.
Yeah, but it goes wrong because he's got that statue in the second episode, right? So he's like the father of the Confederation in some way.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, there's some relevance to that. They even played it in the recap that of his hologram. I'm like, they wouldn't show that in the recap unless something we should be keeping in the back of our heads, that this is a thing that exists in the future and he's revered for some reason.
I really like that scene with Q and Dr. Sung in the restaurant. I feel like it's really...
Yep, it was good stuff.
Yeah, actually the stuff with Brent Spiner is great. Like he says a swear word, you're like, oh my god, he swore. But it's really good. Like, he's a great actor and he's great in those scenes. Like, you can't really think about what he's doing and how he's doing it a little too hard, or else it doesn't make sense. It kind of falls apart. But I think he's really good. in that storyline, and it's kind of interesting, right? Like it's an interesting plot. And I can to me, that's where the core of this season is, like with Q and Sung and Picard, Girardi, and the Borg Queen, right? Like those two plot lines are the things that are keeping me engaged and interested. But it's like, it feels like it's not the majority of the episode, or it's like half the episode.
Yeah, exactly. I felt like as soon as Brent Spiner showed up in the episode, things were like running, like that part of the episode is like a 5-star episode. It's like 10 out of 10, you know? And then there's all this wasted time with other stuff that is kind of like a 2 out of 10. And then it kind of muddles it all up. Well, I'm glad we agree. And so my question is, first of all, I really like that Soji is back. And it totally, as soon as I saw her, I'm like, oh, it makes sense. She's the actual daughter. And the android in the first season was based on her. So clever, these writers. But what stuck out for me was, who is her mother? I feel like there's a mystery there. I think that she doesn't have a mother.
He was very, very... there was some like hesitation there that he didn't want to talk about it. So it's like, there's like a secret there probably that she's I think, because I mean, the Soong, like if you watch Enterprise, the Soong in the Enterprise, he was obsessed with augments and the eugenics wars and all that. And it seems like this Soong as well is into like genetic manipulation. And I mean, they don't mention it, but I mean, we're like in the Star Trek timeline, we're like, what, 30 years after Khan, took over a fifth or a quarter of the world with the eugenics wars. So, I feel like this daughter of his might be some sort of genetic creation, a clone or something, maybe a dead relative or something that he cloned, and with the eugenics wars being so recent, and they probably have laws against that sort of work, that she's a secret. And maybe because of her weird condition, I don't even know if that's the real condition, that you can't go outside and your blood will boil and turn to acid. I don't know if that's a real thing, but maybe she's a genetic experiment gone wrong, that he tried to clone someone or recreate a dead kid or something. But, there's some mystery there, that hopefully plays out in an interesting way.
Yeah, do you think the eugenics wars happened in this timeline?
I don't know is the answer, and I feel like that is a hanging loose thread that they've had so long, and by they I mean the Star Trek producers have had so long to go back and rectify, and with the time travel story, and they have yet to do it. When Voyager went back to Los Angeles in 1996, I thought for sure they're going to go back and that they were going to change something to prevent the eugenic wars, which was going to be like, and that's why nobody can remember them, because they never happened, in this timeline. And they did, exactly, they just ignored it. Like they should have like arrived in 1996 and the whole world should have been like on fire. And it's like they just ignored it like it never happened. It was like, but it's all there. It's like they made a movie out of it. They just like, and it's this hanging thread, big thread, just hanging there.
Yes, 1996 came and went. We did not have any genetic engineer Superman taking over the world.
No,
or spaceships to shoot them off, and keep them in cryogenic preservation.
I think that's one of those things where you just have to kind of gloss over it.
Sure, they want me to gloss over that, but they won't gloss over the reason why Picard has like a British accent. That you have to explain.
You know what's interesting? Renee also has a British accent. Renee Picard also has a British accent.
Yeah, because the thing that he said happened during the after the Second World War. No,
I know, but she has a French flag on her suit.
Oh, well, she's still French. She just speaks with a British accent. I think the problem was they explained it. If they hadn't explained it, then I wouldn't care that everybody has a British accent. We could just suspend our disbelief and go,
There's
well...
lots of Canadians with accents too, you know.
May we?
That's true, and we make fun of them. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, we haven't talked about the Borg Queen getting assassinated.
Oh my God! Right, that whole thing assassinated.
That was an intense scene when that cop. I mean, that cop was super stupid because, like, why would you go and find a spaceship and just walk in there by yourself? And I'm like, oh yeah, wouldn't you say, yeah, can I get some backup here because there's some weird shit happening? But no, he goes in there and he gets friggin' throttled by a cybernetic alien. But yeah, it was very chilling, you know, like I was like, oh, she's doing some dark shit now. I actually thought she's gonna rip off his legs and use them for her own. Like, I need your legs. It's like the Terminator. It's like, give me your legs and your gun.
And your motorcycle.
I just imagine him like waking up that morning going, this is going to be a great day.
Did not expect Girardi to just blow the Borg Queen away. That was a little shocking.
Yeah, it's funny though, because they did this thing where she's pointing the shotgun at the camera and then there's like a brief flash and then they cut away. And then I was like, did I see that? Did she pull the trigger? Because you don't hear anything. You just see it like really briefly. So I wasn't even sure if that's what happened.
No, you hear the gun go off.
Do you?
Oh yeah, and then she has like her like neck is like hanging open there in the next scene.
I must have missed. I was probably playing Wordle or something at the same time.
You have the same problem, the same memory problem as Alan does.
It was interesting, you know. I guess now she's been assimilated, so because she got the nanoprobes there in the face, so that's what I think now. I think we talked about this before, that Girardi's that Borg Queen in the first episode. And I was like, yeah, I feel like we're on that path now. Like because now the Borg Queen's dead, there has to be a new Borg Queen, and who's it going to be? Well, it's going to be Girardi, because, you know, and it makes sense, you know, it's appealing to her, you know, saying how she's alone in every timeline and she has no one and no purpose. And I feel like she will find her purpose being the Borg Queen. And I think eventually that's going to go, my theory, I think I said this in the first review, that her humanity and, you know, her relationship with Picard, and Picard seems to be the one character that really cares about her, you know, that we've seen. And that's going to lead to some sort of peace agreement between the Borg and the Federation when she becomes the Queen. That's what I'm thinking is going, and it might even go into season 3 with that storyline, but that's what my feeling is.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that I really like it. I really like the way that they're going. I really love the last shot of this episode where the Borg Queen is like sitting beside Girardi and she's like got her arm around her and she's like, you and me forever, you know. That was great.
Well, yeah, I liked all that stuff, and it's just that you have to ignore a lot of implausibilities, like so the house is abandoned, there's a gun in the abandoned house, so there's a loaded gun in the abandoned house. That's what we're saying. Okay. And then she shoots the Borg Queen, which was a cool scene. But then she, even though she hates the Borg Queen, she gets close enough that she lets the Borg Queen touch her face. Like, that seems unlikely. So it's like a series of implausibilities. But my biggest pet peeve is that the French in this episode is atrocious.
How was the Spanish?
So how's the Spanish is great. That's the thing, is like they have all these Spanish actors. They just look under any rock and they can find a Spanish actor. But if for some reason there are no French people apparently in Los Angeles that they can hire, because the guy that they got to play the cop, he's not even French. He's Sicilian, and his French was better than the Borg Queen, but that's not saying much.
When she makes her phone call. That was kind of creepy too, when she's like, "Oh, help me, help me," and then he sees this like half this torso hanging in the. I'm like, Jesus! I'm like, why is this guy not running for his life? There's no way you would find me in there.
And I think that's the things those are things. I mean, talking to your point, Namir, those are the things that are really frustrating because, to make that a good scene in terms of good writing, in terms of really clamping up those plot holes in terms of plausibility, it's not that much more work. Do you know what I mean? But they just go, good enough. There's a gun on the wall, and you just think about it for 2 seconds. You go, why would there be a loaded gun on the wall? Like,
why would they even do that? Like, why didn't she just grab like a phaser or something?
Yeah, it's just stuff like that it drives me nuts. And I try to be like positive about these things, but then these little things happen, and it just makes me.
Maybe she didn't have a phaser, know where one was. And that gun was right there.
Yeah, but why was that gun right there?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Alan.
Well, I thought
don't humor them. Stop humoring them. Stop giving them excuses.
I thought
they're getting paid a lot of money.
Okay, be quiet. I thought that they said that the house was abandoned at like World War II or something.
Right, that's my point.
Exactly.
If they were in like an area of conflict, like wouldn't there be a loaded weapon there in case the Germans come into their home at that time?
All right, but this is in 2022, so you're telling me that nobody has gone into that house in 70 years? That's what you're telling me?
And also that shotgun shell in the shotgun is still okay to use? That thing would have blown up in her face. Or fizzled out.
Maybe it wasn't loaded. She had to make her way to the ship. Maybe it wasn't loaded. Maybe she found it and there were some shells sitting on the shelf beside the fireplace.
Alan.
Who knows?
Alan. Come on.
Oh my God.
I feel like
who's
we're
paying
really,
you, Alan?
Really, really nitpicky. Yeah.
No, it's not.
Believe me, I don't feel like I'm being paid by Paramount. I'd be living somewhere nicer.
When you say stuff like that, you insult everybody.
I just want to enjoy this show.
You can enjoy the show,
man. I'm trying. I am.
I'm enjoying the show. I'm allowed to pick out things that don't make any sense. One of my complaints about the show is that all the characters' dialogue is on the nose. They're constantly underlying plot points in an unnatural way. And to be fair, it's not just in the show. Like we recently, the three of us reviewed Haven, and there was a scene in the observation lounge where everybody's talking, but it's all on that like unrealistically like, well, did you know that back then that this is the legend? And the other person says, I did know, and did you know that da-da-da? And then they're just going around the room all just so that we as the audience know what's happening, but they all know the thing. They're just telling each other. It's like, Namir, did you know that your name is Namir and that you were born in December and you live in Toronto?
Yeah, but I kind of feel like in Next Gen, when they do that, I feel like the writers are kind of like, I guess we have to do that because there's no other way out of this. We have to have some exploratory dialogue, right? But, and there's a place for that. But in Picard, they do it like constantly. Like you're right. Like they do it all the time.
Well, it's when they did in TNG, it was bad writing, and then they improved it later. They didn't just keep on doing that,
Yeah.
But in this show, it's kind of like, oh, this is totally okay. This is how we're going to talk. And it's, to be fair, it's not just Picard,
Yeah, I wonder if it's just because maybe like the time dedicated to pre-production and writing the episodes is a lot less than like TNG, right? Like maybe they just have such a compressed timeline that they have to do things like put a loaded shotgun that looks brand new over a 70-year-old fireplace, right? Because they're like, well, how do we need to spend time and to figure out how to get a shotgun in her hand, and they're like, whatever, we don't have time for this, just put it over the fireplace. Like that's what it feels like to me. Like it feels like they just don't have enough time to do these things. So they're just like, just get it done,
That's what it feels like to me as well. It feels like they're rushed. Either they're rushed or they're just lazy. They all show up for work on Monday, And they go, okay, we got to write these 10 episodes. And everybody just spitballs. Okay, what if there's a gun? And then he shoots up, and then, by noon they go, okay, great. And then they take the rest of the week off.
Let's go to the bar and get drunk and forget about this writer session.
Star Trek stuff. I got better things to do.
I was just going to say, I think Alan would probably be able to write an awesome Star Trek episode.
Yes.
No, I wouldn't.
Not with that attitude.
Not with that
I tried to write many scripts and I never finished anything.
You just weren't being paid enough. That's all. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I feel like the main issue that I'm having with this season, because I think a lot of things I've said so far are sort of like more nitpicky things, but the general thing is that there are just so many threads. So let's just try to name what all the threads are, because I don't know how they're going to resolve all these. So there's the Borg mom at the beginning. That needs to be resolved.
Right.
The mama.
Yeah.
Mama.
The Borg mom that shows up on the bridge. Then there's the domestic abuse thread, or whatever that's supposed to be, with the mom and being dragged away. Then there's the Q thread that needs to be resolved in some way, because he's mixed up in all this and there's no solution. There's the time travel element that the past has to be fixed for the future, blah blah blah. There's Rios and the Latina doctor that's been set up and not paid off.
I'd be okay if they stopped. But that just didn't get revisited.
There's Girardi and the Borg Queen. That may tie into the Borg mom thing, but we don't know that yet. That needs to be resolved. There's the supervisor character, Talum, and she needs to be resolved in her mission in some way. And there's the Dr. Sung genetics. Am I missing anything?
There's also there's Elrond and right, Elrond and what's her name? I just totally forgot her name. Laris? No. Elrond and
Raffi.
Raffi, that's it. Yeah. So there's Elrond and Raffi, and then there's Seven of Nine and Raffi, because they've got a thing going. And I don't know, do we include Picard and Laris in the future, or is that?
Oh right, and then there's the whole Picard thing where he needs to find love.
Yeah, he needs to find love or another dog.
Yeah,
it's like a lot of things.
There's a lot.
And Guinan, there's also Guinan, right? Because
I don't know if Guinan has any real relevance to the plot. I feel like she was just there to be a guidepost for Picard. I don't think she's...
Is she done? Guinan is done?
I don't know if they really need to revisit her. She just kind of pointed Picard in the right direction to find the Watcher. I feel like we're finally firing well, not on all cylinders, I guess, but we're to the meat of this plot now. Like, I feel like but I wish they hadn't wasted 2 episodes on the other crap and just focused on this stuff. But yeah, I feel like there's nothing for Rios, Raffi, and Seven to do in this story, and that's why the other stuff existed. And but at the same time, like, if they weren't needed, why have them in the show?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's like, like in other shows, if a character's in one season, they serve a purpose, and then another season they serve no purpose, and they just don't have that character. So, I just feel like they really, shoehorned those characters. Like, I like, Raffi hasn't really grown on me, but I like Rios and Seven, but, there's really nothing for them to do other than giving them stories that are unrelated and a waste of time. And I hope they, I kind of thought maybe they would do more with it, but it feels kind of done now. So, because I kind of thought maybe Rios would find love himself with this lady, or it would be some sort of thing like you say, it's his own grandma or something, and he had to, stay behind and make sure he existed in the future, some foolishness like that. But I feel like that was just a whole lot of nothing, and it's not going anywhere. But maybe it'll turn up again. But I feel like if it does, it'll just be wasting time that could be spent with these more interesting storylines with Soong and Q and the Borg Queen and all that.
You know, it kind of felt like they were writing episodes as they were making them, right? Like they didn't write all the episodes ahead of time. Like it really felt like they wrote the episode, shot it, and kind of did a rough edit, and they were like, oh, this is not working, you know. And then the next episode they're like, okay, let's just get rid of that and then do something else, right? Because it really did feel like the Rios and the Doctor were going to have some sort of long, you know, like a storyline that kind of continues on. But you know, there's also, like, speaking of like unresolved things, there's also, you know, Rios and Girardi have that they've got a little thing going on. And then there's Renee Picard, you know, you have to figure out what's happening with her. There's Soong and Q, and then Soong and his daughter, you know, like there's a lot of stuff happening, and I think it's going to turn into like a Lost type deal where they don't actually resolve a lot of it.
Where Ron Moore gets out of the shower and says, "Threads don't mean anything."
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about the characters.
It's all about the characters.
Well, unless I'm expecting it, like, it seems like a lot of story to resolve in 5 episodes, so I figure it's gonna maybe roll into season 3.
But, oh man, I think that they tried to do like a Game of Thrones, where Game of Thrones has a lot of characters and a lot of storylines, but they were able to manage it in a way that was kind of interesting, right? Because, you know, every episode kind of had its focus, right? One episode would be focused on one character, and then the other storylines would still be there, but they wouldn't have as much time. And then the next episode would be focused on one of those other characters. And they're trying to juggle all these storylines, but they're not focusing on one character kind of per episode. So what ends up happening is none of the storylines really get as much attention as they deserve. I think the only one that actually, like I said before, the only one that works is the one with Girardi and the Borg Queen. And it's just because those two actors are really so good that, you know, you can't help but kind of be invested in it. But none of the other ones have enough, I don't know, meat to it.
I think there was a nod to the infamous two-handed punch in Star Trek there on the bus, and because the one guy does it to the guard, and then Rios comes out as like kind of like, oh, good work there. It's and I was like, I think they're kind of giving a little wink to that ridiculous style of fighting from, you know, the 90s era.
Yeah, everybody was fighting like this.
That entire fight scene was totally pointless. Like there was no reason for that, because, you know, Seven and Rafi just came by and stunned everybody.
I liked it.
Yeah. How does an EMP from a tricorder knock out a bus driver?
I feel like they stunned him, and I like that. I like the little stun.
But it was an electromagnetic pulse, because it was the same effect they used to stop the bus. And they just made a smaller version of it on the bus driver, and it like knocked him out. I'm like, well, he's not a robot. I'm like, if I got hit with an electromagnetic pulse, I would be fine.
It's an alternate timeline, Alan. Anything could happen.
I don't know. It feels really anticlimactic, like I said already, but
the answer is magic.
Yes, magic. That's it.
And Leah Thompson is in this episode.
I know, that was great. I pointed her out. I was watching with Jen. I was like, "Oh, look, it's Leah Thompson," and she was like, "I don't know who that is." I was like, "Yeah, Back to the Future." And she was like, "Oh."
Well, I said to Maggie, I was like, "Oh, it's Caroline the City," because that's what she would know.
Oh,
she doesn't know Back to the Future, but she knows 90s sitcoms.
Okay, so tell me your rating for this episode, Namir, out of 10.
I'm gonna give it a 4. Solid 4. No reason. I mean, it's pretty much, you know, it's an episode that's kind of like just like the other episodes in this season, and I think I gave the other episodes, except for episode 2, a 4, so it's pretty on par.
I like this better than the last couple. I like, you know, I would kind of drop the pointless plot lines, and we're moving along with more interesting ones, and hopefully they pan out and stay interesting. So, I mean, I gave those episodes a 7 each, I believe. but I still didn't like it as much as the first episode, which I gave an 8, I believe. So I'm somewhere in the middle with here, so I'm going to give it a 7.5 because I was left wanting more at the end. I was getting really excited when they started getting to the gala and then the credits rolled, and I was like, no! So, if it gets that kind of reaction out of me where I'm like, I just want to watch the next episode, like, that was, I thought it was a good time for me. So 7.5 out of 10.
I give this episode a 7 out of 10. The parts that worked really well. They were very strong. Like the Dr. Sung, Brent Spiner stuff with Q, and the general plot line of trying to, with Rene Picard and trying to influence Picard's ancestor. I really liked that they had a supervisor, Guardian of the Galaxy character, and I also, like you guys, I really like the Jurati Borg stuff. And just, those other elements that drag it down are what kind of lowers this episode and doesn't make it an 8 or a 9, so it's a 7.
Okay. You sound so defeated.
Goodbye, everyone. See you next week. Make sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment if you want.
Are we supposed to be doing that? Is that a thing?